Indeed. We welcome you all and appreciate your patience in getting everybody into the room. Um, so a formal good afternoon and welcome to Global Kinship, exploring the evolving noosphere. We are a monthly webinar sponsored by Creation Spirituality Communities. Your usual hosts are Penny Andrews and myself, Bob Eisenberger. Penny is unable to be with us today, so my co-host is Marianne Wamhoff, past chair of Creation Spirituality Communities. Welcome, Marianne. We're delighted to have you with us. Today, we are pleased to welcome the acclaimed educator and author Theodore Richards as our guest speaker. Saying the word noosphere can feel awkward initially, but if you think of the word know as in knowing, as an understanding that goes beyond fact to include meaning, wisdom, values, and purpose, then the word noosphere might come alive for you in ways connected to how you are living right now as an image of a sphere of knowing. The noosphere was first noticed and named by Pierre Teilhard de Chardin in France and Vladimir Vernadsky in Russia 100 years ago, just about concurrently. As a paleontologist, Teilhard observed how humanity progressed from hunter-gatherers and gatherers in primitive tribes to the great philosophers, musicians, poets, and vibrant culture of his day. How did this happen? What was next? 100 years later, we can answer that. A rise in population, the interplay of cultures, scientific discoveries, exploration of space, electronic media, and technology. As is often said by maturing parents, our children are so much taller and smarter than we are. Each generation builds upon the one before. Their experiences within Earth's biosphere, as on Instagram, has led them to build a kind of global kinship which we could not imagine when we were their age. So welcome to this gathering and opportunity to learn. We are part of what is called the First Thursdays series, first Thursday of each month on a rotating basis with other programs. As a part of First Thursdays, Global Kinship appears 4 times per year. And now, to gather us into this time and space, Marianne has some words for us.
Mm, thank you.
Marianne.
Thank you, Bob. I have the joy, the privilege of kind of bookending Theodore's presentation, and I always, whatever I do something, especially for creation spirituality communities, I like to begin by lighting a candle. And tonight or this afternoon, I'm doing that for all of us. If you have a candle, super. If you don't, this is for this circle, because the intention of this circle is to learn something, to be enlightened, to increase our connection in and with the noosphere, to deepen our spirituality with all of creation. So that's why I lit the candle. And I'd like to begin with a little bit from Theodore's book, which I read the first time I studied with him, and I recommend. A Letter to My Daughters, Remembering the Lost Dimension and Texture of Life. That's the title of his book. And he addresses the letter to the 3 daughters. I hope I pronounced their names correctly, Theodore. Cosima, I would say Calliope, but I think maybe you pronounce it Calliope. And
Calliope.
Calliope and Vismaya. Got it right? And he's writing to them about his journeys as a younger man. And he starts this particular excerpt. This was my first stop on a journey that would take me around the world completely, a spherical, 3-dimensional journey. A journey of dirt and blood, a journey of taste and bodily sensation, a journey of texture And then he's referring to an Australian he met, a man who was installing ATMs. And he says this man's work was flattening the world to remove its texture so that he could consume it. And he writes to his daughters about taking them on a bus ride and how a bus is a shared democratic space with the possibility of touching one another, of common ground. This is why we do it, he tells them. I want you to see and touch people, the world. And he goes on about the screens we use and how using the screens, by using them, depth has been lost. And then he ends this particular introductory piece. Your salvation, our salvation, depends on your ability to rediscover this lost dimension. I fear for you and the world. What can I offer you in this fight you have on your hands? Seems insignificant in the face of a culture that would flatten the world out and steal your soul. In the face of a civilization that would poison your water and toxify your air. You are called upon to bring the world back to life. This is real work, hard work. I can offer you only memories, stories of the world before it lost its texture, its depth.
Beautiful. Thank you, Marianne. Our guest this afternoon is Theodore Richards. Some of us know him. He may be new to some of you. He is an educator, writer, and philosopher. He's the founder of the Chicago Wisdom Project and co-founder of the Great Work Fellowship. His work is dedicated to reimagining education and creating new narratives about our place in the world. He's received degrees from various institutions, including the University of Chicago and the California Institute of Integral Studies, but has learned just as much studying the martial art of Bagua, teaching in various settings and students, and as a traveler from the Far East to the Middle East, from Southern Africa to the South Pacific. Such a wealth of experiences and travels. Theodore, welcome to our gathering this afternoon. I almost muted you there. I don't want to do that. Welcome. We look forward to hearing about your new publication.
Thank you so much, Bob. And thank you also, Marianne. And thanks everyone for coming. It's really great to see some familiar faces, some of you who I'll see later tonight in my class, um, and some new faces. So it's great. So what I thought I would do is read a few short pieces from my new book, which actually is really it was kind of cool to hear Marianne read from that work. Because I haven't looked at it in a long time, and it's actually very similar thematically to some of the things that I wanted to discuss. So what I thought I would do is just sort of like read something and then we kind of like, pull out a few ideas or themes and have a little bit of discussion and then we could shift to something else too. Okay. So, because I think, I just think it's more fun to have conversation, then I don't think anyone wants to listen to me talk for a whole hour straight. So, so we'll do that. So I'll read something and then I'll say a little bit, and then we can just kind of like have a conversation about it. And I kind of wanted to, and when Bob first invited me and sort of described the general kind of idea of First Thursdays. I'll just say this, like, and I think that really came out. I think Marianne did a really great job of drawing out what I'm going to say now in that in what she shared. In that, I think that one of the things to there's a temptation to think in terms of, it's interesting because my new book is called What Happened to Icarus, and there's a temptation to want to think about the noosphere and to think about the future of humanity as sort of like gaining this sort of godlike capacity to fly above it all and depart from uh, what I call the texture of the earth. And I think consistent with the spirit of creation spirituality, one of the things we have to do is remember also what makes us human. Um, not algorithms, not machines, not computer bots. Okay. So so the first question that I'm sort of posing in this which is sort of the prologue to my new book is, and the question that I think that I'm answering is, what is it that makes us a human being? All right. You're gonna have to catch the baby. My wife's voice was loud and strained, with a hint of panic. I continued to fumble with the shower head. Moments before, when she realized she was in labor, she asked me to attach the hose to the shower head in order to fill the birthing tub while we waited for the midwife. Our third daughter, Vismaya, whom we'd never expected, was a planned home birth. But the plan was to have a midwife present. I fumbled some more. There are things that I'm good at, things that don't particularly faze me. Plumbing and anything that has to do with taking things apart and putting them back together are not on that list. I let out a sigh of relief. I much preferred to catch a baby than reconfigure the plumbing. Ari's voice was letting out sounds that had grown increasingly, desperately primal as Cosima, now 7, came into the bathroom. We'd welcomed her participation in the birth, but she looked a little scared. It was the sounds her mother was making. You don't have to stay, I said. She went back to her room, got under the covers, and waited for her sister to arrive. I washed my hands. Seemed like the thing to do, seemed medical. I don't think I can do this, my wife exclaimed, voice cracking just a bit. She must have been thinking some unarticulated version of this. The midwife isn't here, and I am left in the hands of a man who can't unscrew a shower head, who can't even turn on the television without me. This is why women used to die in childbirth in the 1800s. And I did always joke that without my wife, our home is like the 1800s. So limited are my technical capabilities. But there was nothing technical or even medical about this birth. I looked her in the eye. You can do this, I said. You've done this before. Like this was what we'd been waiting to do since that day so many years ago on the porch to give birth. Like this was the rhyme you'd been waiting to spit, but couldn't quite find the words until now. She focused on pushing. I felt beneath where she squatted. Drops of blood fell over my hands, then more. Then the head. The head is the hardest part. The most painful part, as anyone knows who's given birth or witnessed a birth. It is the uniquely human part of the process. Our big heads contain the minds that contain universes, from the cave paintings to Coltrane. We think we are different merely because our big heads make us smarter, but the human baby is born earlier, less developed than it should be. Any longer gestation period and the head would never get through, so we don't get up running like zebras. Those who have witnessed birth know this too. The human baby is utterly dependent. Because of the abbreviated gestation required by our big heads, we are biologically required to love our babies. We are only human because we can create community and care for one another. Our big heads can write symphonies, but they can also create nuclear bombs. Care is just as important as innovation. The head came out, and along with it, a deluge of liquids. I held the little body as it slid out into my arms, bloody and gasping for air, like her parents, like the whole world into which she'd come. You've done this before. My wife sat on the toilet and put the child to her breast. We cried at the bloody and awesome beauty. She was our beautiful cosmic surprise. I had caught her, our unexpected third daughter. This is how the universe works. We didn't know we'd have three daughters, but the world is unimaginable without each of them. There is a perfection in this, a thing to listen to in the world. Their days are spent in a maelstrom of creative energy, creating, imagining, making worlds. Three girls, this is something in itself to listen to. When I close my eyes, I see those drops of blood on my hands, like the raindrops falling into my hands on the Mozambican beach. To live in this world is to have blood in your hands. To be alive is to have the courage not to turn away because something is being birthed out of the bloody mess. I caught her. Perhaps one day, when I fall and fail, in countless ways, she will catch me too. For we spend so much of our lives trying to fly, trying to touch the sun, trying to be like a god. But the real story always begins with a fall. The real story only begins with descent. So, the question that I think I want to consider, and I'm just sort of interested in people's reflections on that or whatever, is this idea of what really makes us human beyond the fact that we do have big heads and can make nuclear bombs, um, or other things. Um, and how we can find some sort of balance between that sort of intellectual capacity, um, and begin to kind of touch the earth again. So, yeah, does anyone want to ask a question or say anything or any comments? I don't know how we normally organize these things, Bob.
So, yes. So, if you have a question or want to make a comment, please use the find your Zoom toolbar, and you will see a raise hand icon, and that'll put you in the front of the list of icons at the top, and we can take you in sequence.
And I'm gonna speak for Marilyn. I don't know why, but she's not showing and speaking. She says humanity equals self-awareness? Question mark.
Hmm. Humanity equals self-awareness. Yeah. She also said I also prefer no AI intrusion, which I think is interesting because you hear a lot of talk today about like this sort of notion of artificial intelligence and what that means. It's become a big deal. Yeah, I think human beings have a capacity for self-awareness for sure. Um, I think what sometimes gets lost a little bit in our conversations about kind of what makes us human is, and this is the thing that I was trying to kind of draw out a little bit there, is the idea that a human baby has a big head relative to to their body, right? And basically it's because of a large brain inside of the head. And sometimes and embedded in that brain, embedded in the human brain, is the capacity to communicate and connect to other people. So as the human evolves, right? So if we picture like the evolution of the human being in Africa a few 100,000 years ago, we have, for example, is there's like an antelope, right? Which develops a capacity to run away from its predators, right? Like a lion or whatever. And the very muscular, the very muscles and physical structure of the antelope co-evolves with, say, the lion, right? It co-evolves in order to have the capacity to escape its prey and to survive and those sorts of things. So the human, what's unique about the human, we're not fast enough to run away from a lion, right? So if the only issue was the human was a lion, we would be it was like our speed versus a lion. we don't have big sharp teeth or whatever, so we couldn't fight. But what the human can do is be in community and be in relationship. So there's like a capacity that the human has to be aware, but be aware not just of the self, but of the web of relationships in which we are embedded. To be able to create community and to work together in community, I think is really profoundly important. And I think sometimes gets lost a lot of the time in conversations about kind of like what makes a human unique, you know? I mean, I think human beings are unique in our capacity to kind of like build these like connections in community. There's no example anthropologically of humans living um, in an isolated way. Um, okay, so there's a comment. Karen, you can join in if you want. In the birthing process, she's talking a lot about the head. Well, what can you say about the heart? They seem to be really dependent on each other. Can you talk a bit more about that? Yes, that's actually exactly. Thank you, Karen. That's exactly what I'm referring to, right? So the focus is so much on the head, right? The focus is on the kind of like intellectual capacities of the human. But I would say that what makes the human special is our capacity to is our capacity to build meaningful relationships and communicate and collaborate and create those relationships in through language, especially, I think is what really makes humans unique. So yeah, I mean that's really the idea, you know. And I mean, think of the heart as like a metaphor, right? Um for you know, for a way to care. What I'm really speaking of here is our capacity to care for one another, which, as Carolyn points out, is our is a mammalian capacity. It's something that mammals often have in is that notion of care. I would love for someone else to come on and say something out loud instead of only using the chat. That would
I,
be
I,
awesome.
I, thanks. I was just going to encourage that same thing because
Yeah,
it's really
because I can read the
distracting. To,
stuff, but it's cool if you say it and we can talk about it, right?
yeah, yeah, and it's distracting when several comments pile up. Lori does have her hand raised. Lori, go ahead and unmute yourself, and there we go.
Okay. The first thing that popped in my head just a second ago when you were talking about some of the capacities of what makes us human, I thought bees do that. Bees do
Mm,
all of that. And then I was thinking about the different ways, some of the things that they said in the past where the difference between humans and other creatures was altruism, having an opposable thumb, just simple things like that,
yeah,
and I think altruism has been changed because I do see other animals have that also.
yeah,
The ability to have emotion also. Think about elephants and how they mourn their dead. And so we're finding out bit by bit that all these other entities have what we have, that the comparisons are falling apart. I don't know what would be the differences today, except for the big head. And it's funny because the big head and the brain part that is part of that makes us so smart. Well, the animals are born smarter, physically capable, but maybe not emotionally advanced. Well, we aren't either. But like, when the zebra comes out, he knows
right.
how to walk and nurse and find food and do what he has to do, and we don't. We don't have any of that capacity. So they do have more intelligence than us, even though their brains are smaller at birth. So
Yeah. You know, thank you for that, Lori. I think like a couple things. One thing that as you're talking, I was thinking like, you know, I think that maybe first of all, I think sometimes like, you know, when we think about I think there's a tendency to think too much, I think, about like what makes us special or different as opposed to what connects us, you know, to the other elements of the natural world, you know?
mhm.
So when the question of So I think the question was, right, what makes us human, not what separates us from other beings. You know what I'm saying? Those are like two different questions, right? So, so what makes us human can be things that connect us or things that are present in other species as well, right?
Yeah.
That makes us more, and so to connect to our more, to be more fully human isn't always about thinking about how we can be like different maybe or unique, you know? And also,
Mhm.
the other thing I'll say is that I feel like, there's kind of a tendency to think of like intelligence as like to think of human intelligence as the only kind of intelligence. I think there's like a lots of I think each species is just as intelligent as we are in its
Mhm.
own way. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Humans are good at some things that maybe fish aren't, but like, fish can live in water. We can't, right? So that's a like, they're
Yeah.
smarter at that than we are, in a lot of things, right? So
Mhm.
so I think there are like a lot of different ways to think of intelligence, and I think there's I guess what I'm sort of cautioning us on a little bit here, right, is to think that I think if we think only about intelligence in that one way, we're doing kind of like the work of trying to fly too close to the sun. And I think that what we ought to think about maybe is how we can connect more to the earth a little bit. That's me. There's a lot of hands up though. So Bob, should I call on people or you want to do it? How does that work?
You can feel free. Go ahead.
Okay. So let's go with Karen. Go ahead, Karen.
Okay, okay. I guess I'm muted. I'm muted. Okay.
You're
Um,
good.
I'm thinking about what you said about the mammals and
Hmm.
that care for each other. And lately, I've been sitting more with a cat, and it amazes me without a language barrier, how much is communicated.
Hmm.
I think that's also with if we it seems like we have to make a really effort not to just be in our heads but just be more in our heart, in our feelings and touch, like you said, to your daughter, or you said in your reading, it's a lot of exchange other than the words that connect us.
Mm.
I just really appreciate that about the human and
Yeah.
also the animal and also the plant and all of nature, because I think if we just are quiet enough that we get in touch with all of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Quiet
I,
enough. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I think that's true with many uh, other species as well. For sure with humans, like one of the things that I appreciate about little children, babies, I don't have babies anymore, but one of the things that's great about babies is like just how embodied the connection is,
Mhm.
right? Like you don't have to talk about it, you don't have to put words to it. It's entirely embodied. So yeah. And I think um yeah, I think that's a great point. Sylvia.
Oh, um, I yeah, I understand what you're saying, but last night I watched PBS, I think it was, showing the universe and the kinds of imagination in the human that impels us to go out and try to find out things.
Hmm.
I'm blown away. Come on. I mean, out there in the space and dark energy and dark matter and all these wonderful things that we don't know, but we want to find out something. That's that may be unique. I'm not sure. I love
Yeah,
animals
yeah.
and
I
all the
get
things
it.
we've evolved so far. But this human imagination and the wanting to know, you've got to acknowledge that, I think.
Yeah. No,
I
that is really cool. You know what you know how I think of it,
amazing,
Sylvia?
just amazing.
I I think of it sort of like, and I think of it as play. I think that all of that like sort of like curiosity and engagement with the world, like I think that actually what my children do like on a, random Saturday afternoon when they sort of like, dig up stuff in the yard or build a thing or whatever. You know what I mean? Like I think of those things as the same work as the work of like that a scientist does to explore and learn about the universe. It's that playful tendency, which is not unique to the human, but it's an element of the universe. It's an element of life that I
Exactly.
think that are an essential part of who we are as humans. It doesn't mean we're the only species that can do it, Like my
But the
cat plays all the
technology,
time, right? But I
the,
do think it's a thing that's fundamental to our humanity,
but
and is
the technology that we have come to go further in that exploration is impressive.
indeed, indeed. Well, let me find here my okay. I don't know the order people raise their hands in. So
So,
Bob, go ahead.
it's left to right. It's the sequence they come in. So
Okay.
Marianne's been waiting.
Okay.
Marianne, you got a question?
Go ahead, Marianne. Sorry.
No, it's quite all right. I wanted to pick up on maybe it was Karen's heart. She talked about the heart, and the Heart Math Institute in Denver talks about the heart brain connection and how it talks about how the heart the heart's electromagnetic field is something like 450 times bigger and stronger than the brain's. And I think, I'm remembering back, I took anatomy and physiology, and the brain is the last organ to shut down. Except just a week ago, we learned that, the we can think it's shut down, and it's not. We find out that it keeps going for, I don't know, is it hours or days? I mean, we don't know all that yet. But the heart business makes me think of Tear. You talked about Tear, Bob, and the noosphere, and how when we rediscover the power of love, we will have discovered fire for the second time. And that's all I wanted to share. I was thinking about those things.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I think I'll say this real quick. I think that what's important to remember is that any capacity that we have, that humans have, or any species actually has, is really only brought forth in relationship. It's not like, so I think sometimes the tendency is to talk about these things as if they sort of exist in us as just primarily as individuals or in isolation. I think that what's evident to me in thinking about, what happens when a human baby is born is that it is a process of a new kind of relationship emerging. So the in the womb, the baby is in this sort of deep relationship with the mother, and then enters into a new form of relationship. But that what's fundamental throughout the process of life is relationship. Um, and I think that's really important. Marilyn, go ahead.
Let Bob go. Go, Bob.
No, go ahead, Marilyn.
Okay.
I'm going to take us another place. So go ahead, Marilyn.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Theodore, it was an intriguing question to start the discussion. So thank you for that. But I'm going to go back to self-awareness, because when you first raised the question, what makes us human? I had my mind on AI. So I was like, what's AI versus human?
Yeah,
And the
right.
first thing that popped in my mind was emotion. But it
Mm,
doesn't work for all the reasons that people have already pointed out. I'm not going to remember everybody's name, but I like what Lori said and Sylvia and talking about imagination. But here, I'm not a biological expert, but here's the issue. We are tied to the animal world with our amygdala. Okay, we have instinctual drives, the drive to survive, all that stuff. So what made us different? how did we evolve beyond the animal kingdom? The animal kingdom has compassion. The animal kingdom works together, has been pointed out, collaborates, cooperates to stay alive. And what makes us different, to me, is self-awareness. The fact that we can actually transcend the amygdala, the fact that we can see beyond the individual personal animal being that we are, that we have a sense of awareness and our environment and the cosmos beyond what the animal kingdom has. That's my understanding. So again, I have to go back to self-awareness, because when you talk about what are capabilities of humans, yeah, okay, fine. But look how many people don't even act human. They don't operate from the heart. They don't show compassion. They don't cooperate. So, what really makes us different? In my opinion, the only thing I can focus on is that we have the ability to be aware of ourselves, of our individual little, instinctual and fucked up psyches and everything else that makes some people act not human.
That's such an interesting way of putting it, that what makes us human is our ability to act not human.
Mm.
Right? Sort of is. That's okay. Yeah, thumbs up. Okay, so I paraphrased that correctly. And just to be clear, I don't know that there's that we're that different from other living beings. I also don't have an answer, an absolute answer to the question. But Bob does. Go ahead, Bob. Tell us.
Okay, thanks. Thanks all for that. Let me just lower your hand here, please. Um, so well, first, let everybody know when Theodore and I chatted about this and talked a bit how the themes in his book can help inform our conversations about the noosphere and how the kinds of knowing that we're exploring in this whole sequence. And he was kind enough to send me a pre-publication copy of the book. It is now officially published, but he sent me one of the pre-pub copies, and I was struck by a particular sentence that I thought was, or a paragraph rather, that I thought was very germane to that question. Um, it is possible to travel the world and never get below the surface. How many of us have gotten on planes and flown from one sterile, westernized city to another, thinking we saw something of significance? The trick is to find both depth and breadth. At least then it was possible to get lost, to get away from the screen, to be forced to confront oneself. This is what happens in the depths of the cave. What happens when I decide that the only way to dig deep is to travel far. Theodore, I wonder if you might just take that as a stepping off point and step a bit further into some of the rest of the content of what you write about in the rest of the book, about how, as you expressed to me, the fact that for your journey, it was about traveling the world, meeting all kinds of people and cultures, and learning about the ways that they operate and inform their cultures. That brought you to where you are today as an educator and a philosopher.
Yeah, thanks for that, Bob. I think one of the things that I reflect on a lot is I think it was Marilyn that brought up the issue of of AI. I think one of the things that I reflect on a lot is a lot of the book consists of stories of travel, a few decades ago, in a context in which it was possible to get lost. So And fairly recently learned, I write about it or mention it in the book, that the year I was born was the year that the United States government initiated its global positioning uh, technology, um, which I sort of think of as like a way to avoid anyone ever being able to get lost, you know. And it's something I mourn for my own children, that it's really hard to get lost anymore, you know. So, you know, it's like people do travel and then they sort of like, you know, they're like live streaming it, you know, the whole time. And I think that capacity to not know, kind of like to not know what's next, to not know where you're going, um, it's a little bit like using AI as a tool to sort of like work through your thoughts and feelings, you know. Using technology can be useful, but it can also be a way to avoid just doing the hard work of figuring it out, you know. Um, so I think that our capacity to, first of all, to get lost and not know where we're going is a really important thing in terms of like our engagement with the world. Um, and I also think that I think that, you know, I think that there's a way to your point and to your question, Bob, like the idea that if we can go back a little bit to kind of like Thomas Berry's way of thinking about what the story is, the underlying mythos of a civilization, the way that we think of kind of like the big questions about who we are and our place in the world. I think that some of what I refer to as the flattening of the world has to do with like reducing all of that down to a single story, which is the story of like global industrial capitalism, which is also sort of like ravaging the planet in terms of the the uh, uh, the biosphere. But what it's at the same time, it's reducing our capacity to have different stories, different ways of seeing our world. And I think that's profoundly important to be able to see the world through a different lens. Um, that is, I think, in some ways, inhibiting our capacity to answer like some of the most difficult questions that we might face, like climate change, for example. That we only have one, that we're seeing that we're seeing it as a problem through which we can find only one lens to solve it, when the problem is the lens itself, rather than finding solutions within that paradigm. Um, so yeah, I think that's great, Bob. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Yeah, no, that's helpful because we do tend to, I tend to, I have to own this, um, talk and think about the noosphere um, in a much more perhaps technological way. The
Mm,
fact that the global communications are so much more not just possible but easy in many ways. Um, I don't know for sure. Often we have people on here from Australia and New Zealand, and it's just as easy as if they were next door. And the kinds of capacity that gives us to know each other better and learn about distant places and cultures. But I was quite intrigued by your mining your own experience from the internal way and those unique experiences. I agree. I rue the fact that we can't get lost. You know, there are days that I want to, even when
yeah.
you find that nice forest, you still can follow the trail back. Um, let's see, do we have any? Did you have another reading or a portion of the book you
Yeah,
wanted
yeah.
to
Let me
say
go.
something?
You took me in a particular direction, Bob, so I'm going to keep going with that. Okay. So
Okay,
I'll
sure.
read something else. Two different passages that I'll read, both short. And yeah, so a little bit like that. Okay. So My earliest memories are of the vastness, emptiness, and loneliness of space. As a young child, I am fascinated by the stars. I take classes at the planetarium. Each night, I ponder the immensity of the universe and my own smallness in it. If the cosmos really is so great and I so small, then ours must be an impossibly lonely world. I sleep in a small room adjacent to a larger playroom. Two doors separate me from my parents and brother. I am left to ponder the universe, my insomnia, the two doors, alone. Is 1973. In this year, the US Department of Defense invents the Global Positioning System, initiating our war against getting lost. I will spend my life lost, trying to find something. I will spend my life trying to get lost. And I'm skipping to a different part, and I'm going to read this too right now. So bear with me. The lonely apocalypse isn't just about burning forests and rising seas. It's a story of disembodiment and disconnection. It started long before it all began to fall apart. The Israelites knew it when they told their stories of collective liberation. The Buddhists knew it when they told stories of interconnection. Quantum physicists know it today, even if they don't fully grasp the consequences. My daughters know it. We are all what we are all after isn't some disembodied and sterile eternity, the kind promised by fundamentalist preachers and tech bros. What we are looking for is community. Our world isn't a collection of things or even of people. It's story, it's relationship. When we see that, we can fall in love with the world. This beautiful entanglement is the thing I've been looking for since I was a little boy, contemplating the vast and empty cosmos. If only I'd known that it wasn't the edge of the universe I'd been peering into, but the edge of my own soul. So I guess the question is, and this really speaks to I think what Bob was talking about, right? I think it speaks to the question of kind of like what do we mean when we talk about the noosphere, when we talk about salvation, when we talk about liberation? And and I guess what I want to sort of suggest is not that I have like the complete uh answer to that question, but I'd like to consider that we pause for a moment and re-ask the question and think about what if we thought about what if we really took seriously the relational nature of our world? And what if we take that if we really take that seriously, that we are fundamentally in relationship, not individuals, what does that mean for how we think about all of the big questions that we might have?
I keep thinking of the book, The Overstory. The
Hmm.
Overstory.
Yeah, it's a great book. It's a great
It's
book.
exactly what you're talking about, and the change in perspective and everything, and the ending of that, and how the woman that was lecturing, you assumed she was going to just off herself, but she didn't. But it was apparent by the end that it wasn't necessarily us that would survive, but that the earth would. I just loved that book and every single bit of it. It was like I was lost in it, like it just engrossed me completely for the whole time. It had such great ideas.
Yeah. Could you, for those who haven't read it, could you just sort of like, how would you summarize the book if you want to? I could do it too. I've read it as well. It's a great book. Yeah.
There were four or five different characters who were separate stories at the beginning, all threads that ended up being all connected by the end. But the trees were also almost like characters in the book. It was all
Right.
about
Right.
nature and about how each of them interacted with nature and the world in their own different way. How's that?
Yeah. No, great. I mean, it's a really complex book with a lot of different things going on, but you've summarized it really. Richard Powers is the author, and the
Yeah.
book. He's a terrific writer, and the yeah, and it's there are a lot of different threads, but what connects the threads and what's more central than in some ways than the human stories are the trees.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, yeah, highly recommended. Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you. Any other questions or comments about?
I think Marianne's, yes, go ahead, Marianne.
I'm thinking of two things. One is the Project Hail Mary and how that's about heart. I think. I mean, if you haven't seen the movie or read the book, I'm still in the middle of the book. Um, but I thought that just was very heartwarming. Um, and this also reminds me of the way Robin Wall Kimmerer writes.
Hmm.
Um, and in a very clear way is describing exactly these relationships, this interdependency of everything. Um, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's, um, well, go ahead, Susan. I haven't heard from Susan yet. Go ahead. Your hand's up.
Yeah, I don't have well formulated, articulated thoughts already, but it has struck me in the last year that the universe is relational.
Hmm.
And that is significantly a different way of looking at things than we are ourselves entities, and there are objects out there and there are other entities out there. What's not important is the entity is not important. The relationship is what's significant. And I think you asked the question, what if we took that seriously, that we're really relationships, we're not individuals. If we took that seriously, we would begin to care about the others as ourselves. We would share more freely, more generously.
Sometimes what I've noticed is sometimes when a person comes on and they say I don't have well formulated ideas or whatever, then they say like the best thing, you know what I mean? Like they come up with the best thing, you know, the most important things. That was really good. That was great. That was so I mean, yeah, you haven't articulated like every answer to like the deepest questions that but that was really well said and I think profoundly important, right? So it's like you know, if we think about and there are someone mentioned I can't remember who said it, Robin Wall Kimmerer, um, and was that you, Marianne? So which is and she's bringing like sort of an indigenous perspective, which is and here's the thing, right? That's the perspective that is fundamentally relational, and it's the perspective of pretty much all of human culture for most of human existence up until the last couple of hundred years, right? Like that's fundamentally the way human cultures have understood themselves to be in relationship. You see it expressed in Buddhist philosophy, this idea that we are fundamentally relational, and that and that our most basic identity is emptiness because what we are is relationship. There's not like a thing, when we talk about what gets reincarnated in Buddhist philosophy, there's not like a thing there. There's not a soul that's permanent for the Buddhist. What we are is we are relationship. And so we can get attached to certain relationships.
Mhm.
We can have karmic action that continues, but fundamentally there's nothing that's our essence. What's real is this in between thing. You know what I mean? So like okay, so like I wrote a book, right? And so sometimes people say to you when you write a book, sometimes people say, well, "What's your book about?" Here's the thing about that, right? The book I had some ideas, right? Like I wrote them down, or stories or whatever, and I wrote the stuff down, but really the meaning of the book and it emerges in relationship. It emerges when you read it. It's not a fixed thing. So it's that magical space in between where there's a relationship. That's the most fundamental thing. And I think that the point that was brought up that like what if we took that seriously? So it's one thing to say, oh, everything's relationship, but like taking that really, really seriously in terms of the way we engage with the world and understanding that the relationship itself not the individual things that the world consists of. If the relationship itself is primary, it has to transform pretty much everything that we do. Um, and I think uh, when Bob brought up the idea about, thinking about technological solutions, the problem with technology, we can find like more efficient ways to have cars. We can find more efficient ways to do all kinds of things. But if we're still thinking of ourselves fundamentally as individuals, we can also use all of those same technologies to extract more or to kill more. Karen, go ahead.
Um, I'm going back to what you were talking about when you were talking about loneliness.
Mm,
Can't
yeah.
remember how, but anyway, and then one of the things that I think is that most humans have is this a searchingness in their life.
Mm,
And it's like you're never totally satisfied with anything, and you keep searching and searching and searching. And to me, I think the technology is all the distractions that come as you're searching lead you to something different than what you thought you were searching for. It's
yeah.
just that whole aspect of the search, and that feeling of satisfaction, which never seems to be fully there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's good. I
It's
think that's a
not a
great.
human. It's a human. I see it in a lot of people. I think it's almost everybody I know.
So I, yeah. So I think, no, I think that's a really good and interesting comment, and I think it sort of relates to, I think, the broadest theme that I'm trying to talk about in the book, which is the tendency to search and to wander and to look for something when often I think the thing that is mo that we need we need to look into is the thing that's inside of us, is that journey of depth as well as of breadth, as I said before. So yeah, and I think that's I think the fundamental work of so many mythic patterns of where there's a journey of descent before one can go to the stars. I use Dante's work a lot, right? So Dante goes to hell before he goes to the stars.
Yeah,
And
that's the
so
hero's journey.
the hero's journey, exactly, right? So that's the hero's journey, and you see that pattern in so many different stories, right? And so I think, yeah, and I think that's worth considering in thinking about the noosphere. I think that's worth considering. Marianne, go ahead.
I've been thinking. I love your book, by the way. I just finished it, and I just really love it. And it has, like, you've traveled not once but twice. I mean, and probably more than that. But you talk about the time you worked for the NGO, and then you talk about the time I almost said circumnavigated. You went around the whole earth. And I taught in China for 15 months. And I know when I got home, wow, everything was different.
Mm.
Everything was different. Do you think it's possible? Um, is it necessary to sever the connection with one's culture, with, this milieu we're in, the water we're in? Is it necessary to be in a different something before we can begin to see clearly? Or is this not even related to, or do you just have to get it out of your system if you're a wanderer by nature?
Yeah. Yeah, um you're wading into the realm of asking questions beyond my pay grade Marianne. Like I don't know. That's great. Uh, so yeah, maybe. I think it's hard to know, you know. I think so one of my I'll say one of my one of my favorite teachers was Brian Swim. And Brian, I remember really distinctly being in class with Brian, and this was, everyone in the class, everyone was like extremely sort of like anxious and concerned with the kind of poly crisis and with climate change and things were going on. And I can remember really distinctly one time, and there was a certain like energy in the group and in the school in general, like that there was like a certainty about this like collapse that was coming, right? And I can remember really distinct, and Brian was like really engaged in these questions, right? Really concerned also. But he said at one, I remember really distinctly Brian saying, and this is someone who is as knowledgeable about kind of like the scientific evidence for climate change as anyone that I know. And I remember him saying, we don't know. Like we just don't know, you know? So here's what I'll say to that. So to all good questions, which most questions I don't know the answer to, is that like one of the things that we got to do is like stop pretending like we know. You know what I mean? Like being okay with not knowing everything. You know what I mean? Like so I think that asking I think that we have to understand that the work to unlearn some of the things that we've been taught is really serious work, and not skip that part of it. That's what I mean by like we have to like really do that journey work within. So it's like the journey that we take where we're like exploring the world, we begin to see, oh man, like maybe the things I've been taught aren't any good. But we have to like understand that unconsciously we have so much of that in us, so we've been conditioned in so many ways. And that's really important and serious and not at all easy work to do. So I don't know if in any way that answers your question, but I think like just like taking seriously how how deep one is conditioned by the cosmology, the worldview that we're immersed in is really important. I'll say that much. And it's not always all bad. Like it's not everything is not bad about the worldview we have. So Lori, is that your hand? Is that a hand? Go ahead.
I I had an absolute definite no to Marianne's question. That no, you don't have to leave your present culture to be enlightened. You know what she'd said. It was like, no, I don't think so. We do that with meditation. We do that with reading and learning and growing and evolving. And I'm going camping for a week next week, and we'll just be in the woods for a week, and I'll be out of society basically, with no technology and stuff like that. But I can reset a little bit while
Hmm.
I do that, and like reading the overstory, it changed my mind. It flipped a few things. Being in your class on Thursday nights has really flipped my mind a few times
Good.
too, and so I think it's possible without me having to go to another country or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with that. I think there are all different kind of ways to do the work, but and it's possible to not do that work and travel in a different country also, right? So or whatever, So yeah, there are all different ways to get there.
It's
Bob, oh, go
yes.
ahead.
Well, I was just going to just a personal reflection. I mean,
Yeah.
it's really a challenging question because um, obviously we swim in the waters we swim in, and we love and value our culture, or many parts of it at least. This is the kind of frame of reference that we know, and the idea of the way Marianne put it, having to give up what we currently have in order to get to something new is really frightening, to contemplate having to abandon what we know and love. And simultaneously, we all know how hard it is to change the way our mind works. So, we can know more and we can value other perspectives, but the patterns and ways of thinking are also pretty deeply embedded. And so, how do we find the middle ground between those options. So,
Yeah, yeah. No, that's great, Bob. That's like I think you're pointing to the genuine, I think, fear of the unknown. And I think all one has to do is kind of look at the geopolitical landscape today and observe the rise of fascism, not just in this country, but all around the world. And I think there's a direct link to a often unconscious recognition that the the stories that many of us have been given no longer are holding the world together. And so like there are different responses to that, but one of the responses for a lot of people who are I think largely responding out of fear is this tendency to cling to an imagined past,
Mm.
which is one of the sort of I think one of the things that fascism does is it creates like an imaginary past that we're trying to cling to. Um,
mhm.
Mhm. It's
so
like make
absolutely
America good again.
Yeah.
something like that, for example. I don't, yeah, yeah, that would be a great example.
Yeah.
Exactly. Um, yeah, right. I mean, and that's like, I think it's implicit in most fascist ideologies, and that's like a very explicit reference, right, to an
Yeah.
imagined past, right? Like
Yeah.
again, like when there was
Right.
slavery. I
Right.
mean, like that's sort of the idea. But the idea is that there was a time when things were better, and that rather than sort of like leap into the unknown, which is what we're doing, whether we want to or not, fighting against it, to stay in the kind of old paradigm. Yeah.
So,
Um,
Carolyn, did I see your hand go up earlier and then we went a different place, or I don't want to
Well,
put you on the
it
spot.
did, but you did go a different place. But I always feel like my perspective is a tad contentious, and so I always hesitate to bring my voice into the circle for that reason. But um, you know, just a few comments to add a different perspective or yet another perspective.
Mhm.
From where I'm sitting, we are animals. So when we talk about ourselves as something other than animals, we're pushing ourselves away from our involvement with nature, and we're also
mhm,
pushing ourselves away from the reality of what we are. If we're not animals, do we get our own category? And that strikes me as very egocentric. This is sort of like somebody becoming president and making themselves king. I mean, you can't just say, "Oh, I'm going to create a whole new thing for myself, and I'm going to
Mhm.
pretend I didn't come from this other place." And it's just not. It's not real. And while I have the floor, another one of my kind of pet peeves about the noosphere is, and I think it was an early concept that Thierry Desjardins had, that it was comprised of human imaginings. But I would just remind you that Edwin Mitchell, who founded the Institute of Noetic Sciences, says that as an astronaut, he saw at least evidence of 12 different extraterrestrial species on our planet. I'm pretty sure there must be more than that. And of course, they're also very curious. So, I think curiosity is something that's in all of creation, and that life becomes curious. The amoeba is curious. The amoeba is curious to go out there, and the amoeba is also fearful. I mean, this is part of the dance of survival and the dance of creation, the dance of evolution. So I think, we just forget so much where we come from, and I just so frequently hear what I feel is anthropocentric hubris. There's so much about, oh, well, we humans are this way, we humans are that. There's not a single quality that you all have brought up today that I don't feel there is also available in other life forms, whether it's earth-based life forms or life forms that are extraterrestrial. So I mean, we are special, we are unique, but so is every creature. So as Aquinas says,
mhm,
every creature is the word of God. And when I say creature, I'm including the bacteria, I'm including all those wonderful organisms in my gut. and I'm including you know the archaic ancestors that we have that are no longer with us, the kingdoms that aren't even with us. We owe them as well. So it's all part of the same dance of relationship that we are, that is indeed universe wide. And oh my God, what about the other universes? Well, we won't go into that, but let's just stick to our universe. But yes, it's absolutely dance of relation. But I think we just so much push ourselves away from remembering where we came from, and I think that's a lot of the problem. And I also want to add, heard the story about these people on this island off of Ireland, and until very recently, they could still hear each other's thoughts. There was still profound telepathy in their community, and I think that's still the case in a lot of indigenous communities. But we've become so reliant on phones and everything else, we've lost that. And I think Karen mentioned this earlier, just getting quiet. But even just getting quiet, I can sit here and be quiet as much as I want. I'm sorry, Marianne, I still can't hear what you're thinking, even though I'm trying to hear what you're thinking, but I can't hear it. And I think we've had that capability in the past, and there are other non-human animals and life forms on this planet that have that right now. So, and I'm pretty sure the bats get up there and talk about how bad our radar is, or the dolphins, and oh my God, have you seen their sonar abilities are for shit. So, we love our form of language, and then we kind of pick up our leg and piss all over other forms of language as if they're not important. So anyway, that's my little soapbox. Thank you.
I think that was great, and I think it's really to the point, actually, Carolyn. I think that I think that far too often we are thinking of ourselves as, I mean, the way to think of humans is different, but I agree, all the capacities. I honestly don't think we came up really with anything that is, you know, maybe expressed differently in a human or appears differently, but like all capacities that are part of the evolutionary dance, the cosmic dance. I think all of the things that we've talked about are present in many different, maybe of different forms, but in different ways. And I think that I think that I think we're pretty good at thinking about how special we are, right? Like I don't think that's like not the work we need right now. You know what I'm saying? And I think maybe that's the energy of what you were coming with, like is that's not really exactly, you know what I mean? Like maybe there's a way in which, um, like some people, like with some people need to be told they're special because maybe they don't feel good about themselves. Some people need to be told they're not special, right? I always think of that as my job as a parent with my children, right? So that to teach them simultaneously they're both special and also they're not really any different from anyone else. You know what I mean? Like those two
Yeah.
things we can kind of like hold, But as like a species, I think we need a little more of the "you're not special" lesson right now, Um, and I mean, I think that in terms of like the challenge for humanity at this historical moment, it's actually much more about remembering who we are in relation to our ancestors, in relation to other species. So yeah, well said. Thank you. Yeah, wasn't that contentious. I've had way
Well,
worse, more
No.
contentious comments and things than that. Well, go ahead.
I just want to add that one of my favorite things to do when I can't sleep is look at all the cute little short animal videos that just tell us so much about how altruism, hello, it is existent everywhere, and these wonderful interspecies relationships
And
uh, are just so much fun to watch.
I like that you brought up the bacteria in your body too, because I think like we're like also like we're like multiple beings within each of us too, right? Bob, what's the time like for this? Like, what time should I stop talking?
So generally we go to 5:30. We were a little bit late starting, so if you've got maybe 5 extra minutes that we can go past, we get I think we would still have time for two hands I see up, and then maybe some final words from you.
Okay, that sounds good. All right, good. Okay, Lucy.
Yeah, with what Carolyn brought up, I guess the one thing I look at, and I do believe humans think they're the pinnacle of creation. And, we are just one species scientifically. And if you really think about it in the web of life, what do human beings really offer to the rest of creation? We talk about relationships, and I get so upset when people talk about how we're all interdependent. But if you really think about human beings and getting our basic needs met, we are totally dependent on all the other species. Who depends on us? I mean, there are so few, maybe the mites in our eyebrows and in our hair, I don't know, but there are so few species that rely on us as a source of their ongoing energy and life force. But humans go nowhere if you take everything else away. And I think that's one of the biggest changes, that if we could get people to understand how dependent human beings are on the rest of the creation, and I think that noosphere involves way more than just the human thinking component of it. And that's all I have to add.
Yeah, no, that's
I came
that's
in late. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. That was well said. That was well said. That was well said. I think, yeah, like remembering how reliant we are on other beings for everything. Yeah, that's I think a useful thing to keep in mind. Suzanne, go ahead.
Well, listening to all of this, I have some kind of broad thoughts. I'm a huge Brian Swim aficionado. I could be his PR in the world. He is my number one human being for turning the world around. And the essence of what I love about Brian, because it's a category of Teilhard to Thomas Berry to all of the people now who are in that lineage. And the reason I like Brian so much of all the people, because I like them all, but Brian's my favorite because he, when you are in his, presence, you get so excited about how wonderful humanity is. And in my own personal energetic in the world is to turn it around. I'm really serious about it, even though I know I don't have any power, but nonetheless, nobody's got, we don't have leadership now, so I'm doing what I can. And what I can is to instill in humanity this sense of how privileged we are to be human. We're the only ones who can affect the creation. The animals are on instinct, and we have the capacity to create. So all that I do really, essentially, in a very active communication that I have going, is to one of my categories I call pep talks for humanity. Just encourage humanity to be wonderful, because in the situation we're in, is a lot of moving the deck chairs, trying to fix this, fix that, but you can't fix anything unless you get underneath everything. And underneath everything, if humanity is excited about being human, we will create a beautiful world. So, that after all the individual things that have been said here, I think maybe that's the biggest thing of all. We're in such trouble, overshoot and polycrisis and all of that. I'm deeply knowledgeable about all of that. From that place, it doesn't look like humanity has a future. And we're going to have to come up with what hasn't been come up with before. But the best way to do that is for humanity to be excited about getting this world to work. And that means individual people feeling their oats. I'm human. Isn't this wonderful that I can go to work? And, if you get all of humanity excited about its capacity to act, change, affect creation, be loving instead of warlike. I think that's the pay dirt, that's the place to focus for the possibility that we'll save ourselves. Because if we're not feeling good about being human, we're not going to come up with anything. But if we do, if we want humanity to continue, then just tuning into how privileged we are and how possible that is, I think, is the best answer that we could have to what to do in this current terrible, challenging situation we're in.
Thank you, Suzanne. Um, and I agree. Brian is so I mean he's a wonderful teacher and has such great ideas, but he's also such an optimistic, positive person. I just love the guy. Yeah, he's great. And so I appreciate that perspective, right? Because sometimes, you get, and that was kind of, I didn't go as far as you, but the thing I mentioned before when I brought up Brian was that, um, he's like, we don't know that everything's falling apart. We just really don't know. We know that there's a lot of bad stuff happening, but like there's uncertainty too. So, I think to close, if that's cool, Bob, I was told by Nathan I should share something about the class that I have upcoming that I should share. So I'm going to put that in the if I could, I'll put that in the chat.
Absolutely, that's great. And then Marianne has a couple words for us as a final comment
Okay.
too. But
And if I
yes,
could, do you want me to say
yes,
any?
whatever. Yes,
Okay, so let me I'll put that in the chat. It's a second part of a class that I've been teaching, but even if you haven't taken the first part, you can sign up. So and you can see it there. Some of the people who are in the first class are here today, which is awesome. I think I can also share a link to the book too. I'll share that too. And then I'll read something to close, which I think is maybe relevant to some of the conversation. So the first link I shared is the class, and the second one is the book. Okay. All right. So this is you know, although this book is not as much about parenthood as the other book that Marianne referenced, I seem to be keep the things that I chose to read today that seem to be on that theme. So, and this is okay. At some point, most parents have to decide whether to shield their children from the harsh realities of our world or to allow them to retain some innocence of childhood. In the film La Bella Vita, uh, Beautiful Life in English, this question is taken to the absurd. A father, Guido, and his son are taken to a concentration camp, and Guido convinces his son that it's all a game. In the age of polycrisis, we are all Guido at some point. And now, as parents, we have brought children perhaps into a dying world, or at least a collapsing civilization. What are the skills they require? Certainly, a mistake we might make would be to assume that the credentials of a collapsing system would be of value. Maybe they need survival skills like growing food or shooting a gun or bow and arrow. But maybe the best thing to do to confront the apocalypse as parents is to acknowledge the most obvious aspect of the transition. We do not know. My intuition is that our children need to know how to love, how to be in community, how to look within and cry together. This is as important as growing food. It is food. At times, I mourn the world into which I have brought them. And it's not even really the destruction of it, it's the sterility. I wish they could get lost. I wish they could travel the world without being tethered to a smartphone, without a map.
a wonderful place to close it. Yes. Well, I want to thank you very much for sharing your time with us today and your insights and your willingness to respond in the moment to comments and questions that have arisen. Um, Marianne, have you got some closing words for us, I believe?
Yeah, and I follow through on your parenting theme. Theodore tells us that children offer something we cannot access without them. They play. They make worlds every day. They take them apart, reimagine them, and begin again. Play is the source of all world making. And I have three other little short things that the first two come from his book. They're little excerpts that, at least in the book, he says he still keeps on his desk. They were handwritten by his friend, mentor, a woman with whom he worked, for whom he worked on and off for years. And I love this. I mean, I thought about it when my father was dying, but I think it speaks to us now. From Dylan Thomas, do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage against the dying of the light. And then Yeats, things fall apart. The center cannot hold. Mere anarchy's loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed. And everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best of lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. But mainly, I'd like to leave us with Mary Oliver's stanza from her poem, Sometimes, the fourth stanza. And I fell in love with this really because Mark Steiner uses it quite a bit. But this Theodore's ending coincides with Mary Oliver's. Instructions for living a life. Pay attention. Be astonished. Tell about it. So with that, we're going to blow out the candle. Mine's already gone out, unfortunately. But first we're going to take the light. Anything we learned, anything we're thinking about into our minds, maybe we're going to take it into conversations and take it into our hearts to ruminate and balance. Is this for me? Am I allured to this? Or what? And share it with the world out there. So the light doesn't go away. We're sharing it. Thank you so much, Theodore, and everybody, and Bob, back to you.
Again, want to thank everyone for being here today. It's always instructive and fascinating to see the questions, to hear the questions that come up and the dialogue that can get generated. So we appreciate everybody for coming back for that. And we look forward to seeing you on future First Thursdays. Watch for the newsletters and the announcements of what's coming up. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Bye.
Yeah.